Things are looking so much better than the sentiment is saying. So today I think it's wise to jump into the sentiment and also the data that goes with that sentiment for Bitcoin and altcoins, because of course there's still a lot of talk. Is the cycle over? Is it not over? And more people seem to be convinced. And I don't honestly think it's that easy, as in everybody can now collectively predict the bear market being in or coming. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Everybody walks away happy, on time, and nobody gets wrecked. It's usually not really what crypto does. So let's take a look at what actually is going on and why the cycle, in my opinion, is very far from over. So welcome to the Fomo Factory. Like the video. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the bell notification on. Please don't get wrecked by the idea that it's just the end of the post-halving year, and that's the reason why Bitcoin and altcoins and crypto should go down. I made a big video about that, one of my latest videos, where we spoke about the whole business cycle and how the business cycle has been in every kind of way more accurate than the whole 4-year cycle has ever been. And if we look at the business cycle so far, we are sitting at very low values right now. And what drives this up? Rate cuts, the stop of QT, basically everything that we are getting right now. And Bitcoin is now indeed for the first time going to witness the fact that we are going to go into a longer cycle. And you might be like, well, that's weird and nonsense. And then you're calling that it's different. And I don't want to spend too much time on this. I did this in the last video, but the business cycle often has periods where it goes on for way longer or shorter than just 4 years. And Bitcoin already witnessed that in 2011, actually. So now we seem to be still stalling out at a low level, explaining why Bitcoin is also not going parabolic. Now let's take a look at Bitcoin itself and the things that I think that most people are now focused on, which you might not want to focus on right now. One of the things is a certain moving average, right? A lot of people are now discussing the fact that we have a 50 weekly moving average and that's going to be the cause of all doom. And I think that that's actually not really the thing that we should focus on. We started with the bull market support band. That's more like the 20 weekly moving average. And as you can see in the first cycles, that was holding as support. And when we broke that, we went into a bear market, new bull market. It was holding as support, really broke it, turned into a bear market, holding it as support, broke it, turned into a bear market. And from the last cycle, you can see that we started to break that 20 weekly moving average more and more, but that it didn't signal a bear market. And in this cycle, you can see that we are going below it and above it all the time. Now, the same goes for the 50 weekly moving average. And why is that? Because these are short-term moving averages, and Bitcoin matures over time. So it moves slower over time, hitting the shorter term moving averages more often. So at a certain point, just like the 20, the 50 is going to be invalid. And this could definitely be the cycle where it is, not just because I think like, well, this is just going to be the cycle, but because on certain charts, it already plays out. If you look at the altcoin market, for example, we were also holding the 50 weekly moving average, bull market. When we broke it, bear market. Here it was a big uptrend, broke it, bear market. But now in this cycle, you can also see that we have broken that 50 weekly moving average already like multiple times. And that did not signal the top or anything. That was actually the signal to buy, right? All these breaks below the 50 weekly moving averages, average, were insane buying opportunities. If you got in right there, you bought the lows. And this will, of course, like I said, if crypto moves slower as like there are diminishing returns, also be invalid as a bottom indicator. And then we can keep on moving to the next best thing, which is the 100 weekly moving average, which we are now holding. So maybe now that's the next one that we should take a look at, right? And Bitcoin is now still pretty far above that. So that might be the next one. So I would not like focus too much on that, as that gets invalidated over time, all the time. Another thing that I think we should not pay too much attention to, again, is the 4-year cycle, because again, there, I think, is no such thing as a 4-year cycle, at least not in crypto. There is a cycle, of course, definitely. Look it up. There's for the macro, there's a cycle. But again, that's because there is a complete business cycle, right? And this oscillates since 75 years. Right, and it always marked every single top for Bitcoin. And again, I'm not going to repeat what I did in the last video, but if you have seen that, then it's pretty clear to me that Bitcoin doesn't move on its own, but that there is a business cycle, which explains also why Bitcoin moves like that. Yeah, and this is not looking like a top to me, actually. So what could be the case? The case could be that, like, it's now grinding up slow but steady, that it just keeps on doing that, and by the time we get more rate cuts, that then it is actually going into the higher range again. And what could be the reason for that? The reason could be that Powell is gonna leave the Fed in May, I think it was, and they will play someone who's very dovish. Yeah, that person, he cuts the shit out of these rates, and that then the market is going to go in the parabolic run that it always has before it starts to go down again, right? So the extended cycle theory, yeah, people have said it before, but based on the wrong reasons. And now we finally see that it is already happening. So keep in mind that that could be the case for Bitcoin as well. In the meantime, Bitcoin is going down. And yeah, I mean, look, it's 96K. It doesn't really look that bad to me. If you look at this, Bitcoin at the moment is just down with 24% from the all-time high. We have seen a correction here, which was 31%. We have seen a correction here, which was 33%. We have seen in the beginning of the cycle, have we seen a correction of 22%, same like now. So correction-wise, this is like normal. We've seen this multiple times in every cycle. Cycle-wise, there's nothing to worry about because the whole business cycle is sitting more at lows. And when it comes to these moving averages, yeah, they seem to get invalidated over time all the time. Right? So I don't want to look, for the people that really think that, I don't want to look for reasons to say like, well, this is not over. But I can't find reasons to see that it's over. I honestly can't. And if I'm wrong about this, fine, that's my mistake, and I will pay for that. But I think that at this stage of the market, it is more dangerous to not be in the market, because you know what people do when they are sidelined and the market is going up. There's a big bunch of FOMO, and people, they will buy the top eventually. So yeah, I will be a little careful with that. Now, when it comes to altcoins, a couple trades that I'm in at the moment actually is, like I said, I converted my altcoins to, I converted my ETH to altcoins back in this period for the half, like 50% give or take. And whenever the risk level was sitting at 3%, I think, was over here. Yeah, I converted the rest of my Ethereum into altcoins, and now it slowly moves up. It's now sitting at 18% risk, and altcoins against Ethereum, they have a pretty good bounce so far. But it is far from, you know, where the actual target is. And that's the cool thing, because, hey, bull market, bear market, crap market, doesn't matter. Because if altcoins are getting worth more against Ethereum, then it's fine. Then I convert it back into Ethereum, and Ethereum will be going up one day eventually on the dollar pair, and then you still make money. So this was a perfect trade so far. And I'm not cashing out yet. Now, the Bitcoin dominance is at the moment, you know, I don't think it is really strong at this point. I mean, the Bitcoin dominance definitely had a run, right? A lot of people were saying, no, you should buy altcoins. Bitcoin is boring. Then Bitcoin showed like, okay, we're going to annihilate altcoins. And at this point right here, people came to the conclusion like, okay, yeah, you should be in Bitcoin. To be honest, like, yeah, it's good to come to that conclusion, but the execution here, I felt like, okay, you know, now sit it out. Now we're at the top. Now write it down and then go into Bitcoin. But this is definitely for me not the time to say like, well, Bitcoin over altcoins. It doesn't make sense, because the Bitcoin dominance obviously has a lot more room at this point to go down. Also, if you consider that, yeah, the stop of QT is now going to happen, right, which is only beneficial for altcoins. Plus, if you look at actual altcoins on their Bitcoin pair, it's just sitting at range lows, and so far it is holding it pretty well. And this looks more like a accumulation range than a distribution range, of course. I mean, you have stages in the market, right? You have an accumulation range where it goes kind of sideways around the bottom. It's where you buy. Then you have the uptrend. It's where you make your money. I've said this many times before. Then you have a distribution phase. That's just where you want to load off. And then you have the downtrend, and that's where you want to sit it out. Yeah, this doesn't look like a downtrend to me anymore. I mean, we are at the same level as where we were in June 2024. That's 1.5 years ago right now. Yeah, a downtrend doesn't go like sideways for 1.5 years. You could say like, yeah, it still went down. It also went up, right? Overall, we are now at the same level. So again, people calling for alt season, not yet. People calling for lower, also not. Like nobody is right about this. This is now just in the stage where it just does nothing and is waiting for general direction, basically. But if I look at altcoins on the Bitcoin pair, I just look at this chart and I'm like, dude, but let's be honest, if this was a coin or whatever, is this the point where you want to be bearish on it, or is this the point where you feel like, okay, this, you know, this is not the point for me where I would say like, okay, we've waited, now sell, right? Like what, why? Now, what's interesting, I mean, the fear and greed index, guys, it's sitting at 9%. Look, you can be bearish if you want, right? But overall, even in the short term, we all know that a fear and greed index sitting at 9 is simply not the moment where you want to sell. I mean, that like literally never worked. Unless you want to make a real quick trade out of it. We have a example right here. The fear and greed index was sitting at 10. Right? And Bitcoin was sitting at 84K. Eventually, the fear and greed was going a little bit higher, but Bitcoin still went down to 76K. So it went down a little bit more. But overall, if you just look at how it went, then this was the period where you would have said like, okay, the fear and greed index is sitting really low. And that's why I'm going to DCA, because I am not going to try to time the bottom. That's just simply not what you want to do, right? So I'm looking at this right now and I'm like, is it a good idea to buy right now? Yeah, duh. Like, of course it is, right? Doesn't mean that it cannot go lower in the meantime. Bitcoin is now at $95,000. It's not a prediction, but it could go to 90 for all I know, right? Maybe lower, maybe not. But overall, if you look back at this period and you were like, yeah, I bought Bitcoin at 84K, still, it's pretty nice. You wrote it down a little bit more in the meantime, and then you wrote it up a lot. Nobody is really regretting buying there, unless they sold right here, of course, right? But that's just simply not what you want to do. But the fear is high. And I notice it on the channel as well. A lot of people are emotional, right? They're getting angry and want to prove why it's all going down and it's bad, because it's just really emotional and the fear is just really popping out right now. That's great because you know exactly what you need to do at that point. If we look at the risk levels for Bitcoin as well, on the weekly time frame, and we're going to apply this to a daily as well, you see that the risk levels, and this on Blockchain Decoded, we're dropping this soon. If you buy into low risk levels on Bitcoin, on the weekly, you have the most legendary buy, basically. You can see it right here. This was just the period where you bought the bottom. This is the period where you bought the bottom. This is the period where you bought the bottom, right? That's where you want to buy, 100%. However, it also goes for selling. This is the period where you wanted to sell. This is the period where you wanted to sell. Tops. This is the period where you wanted to sell. Fully the top. This is the period where you wanted to sell. Top. We are now sitting at 35%. It's not that like super buy right now, like bear market lows, but it's closer to that than the top. This has a perfect track record. So if you are in crypto and you are just not sure about what might happen, right? Nobody really is. But if you feel like, yeah, it could go both sides, then I would sincerely like, okay, maybe take profits if you have profits or something. And on some other things, be in, right? In my opinion, there's more up than downside at this point. Now, I want to go over a couple comments in the YouTube section, because these are getting to a point where it is sometimes hilarious, actually, but some people also have really good comments on a couple things. Somebody said, "For motion, I think you are half right, half wrong. I totally agree that the 4-year cycle theory is broken. It probably never was correct to begin with. But jumping to the business cycle theory bandwagon isn't any better either. Sure, you showed a bunch of charts in TA, but all of it's just speculation. There's no tangible proof that crypto is locked into the business cycle. Like, there's no proof for nothing. Of course, I get that. But the thing is, though, that what I just find interesting is that people seem to be really convinced about the 4-year cycle because it had marked 3 out of the 4 tops, and that's it, right? But like, that's basically everything that people are holding on to nowadays. And then there's also something like the business cycle, like I said, right? It makes more sense. It means that there's money in the system, and therefore risk assets are going up. But yeah, if you look, right, we had the top in 2011, 2013, 2017, 2021. We had the pump here that marked altcoins going up by the end of December. We had the mid crash in 2012. We had the crash in 2013. We had now, it signaled blow off top, 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 blow off top. Distribution phase. For the first time, Bitcoin distribution phase, actually, instead of a blow off top. And now it's a slow grind. Bitcoin is a slow grind. Like, sure, it can all be this is not speculation, in my opinion. Like, this is like, and if it is, then it's very good speculation, because this is like perfect for me. But nothing is a certainty, of course, definitely. Like, the only thing that makes me feel like, okay, maybe if Bitcoin will not go really high anytime soon, then it's not because the business cycle goes up and that Bitcoin seems to decorrelate from it, but more like the business cycle isn't going up, right? That's good. But then again, it moves based on liquidity injections. And again, rate cuts, no QT, that kind of stuff, right? So I would say follow the macro. If all of that stuff is not going to happen, then yeah, for Bitcoin and crypto, it's not going to happen. At a certain point, it will happen, of course, right? You see also, again, that oscillates for 75 years. Of course, eventually it will go up. And what could be a enemy in the meantime is, a recession. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, we had one in 2020, of course, COVID, and we had a big financial crisis. And basically what happens then is short term, everything goes to shit. Buy as much as you can, because the Fed is going to turn on every single money printer that they have. You see how short-lived these spikes are. And basically in full history, every time we got that, and we just got that actually like 4 or 5 times, it was over before you knew it, right? So the worst case scenario is that we get a legendary buying opportunity, in my opinion, that most even will miss. And well, the worst case scenario is that it just keeps on slow grinding, actually, and that people get bored out of the market. That's kind of what's happening right now. You said, here's my second point. We have to face facts. If alt season is not a thing, then there's really no reliable way to make gains in crypto for the average person, because without alt season, we're all just gamblers speculating on a big roulette table. Yeah. But yeah, again, alt season, again, alt season only happens if there is enough money, right? You can also overlay alt season on this, and you'll see that, like, if there is money in the system, people will go into Bitcoin, right? It's nice, it's fine, we have the money, we don't want to gamble too much. However, if there's a lot of money in the system, people feel like, fuck it, right? Let's YOLO. So, orange line, altcoins first, Bitcoin, alt season. You can see that alt season really actually started here, right? Where the ISM was already high. Then the ISM took a hit, alt season took a pause. And then when it started to go up, alt season had its second leg. And then it died off in the ISM. alt season died off. And here it is the same case. ISM, bam, going up, alt season again, right? ISM was going down, alt season stopped. And here the ISM had a big move in the end of 2024. And that's the relative small rally that altcoins had versus Bitcoin again in this cycle as well. So it's just as tied to the whole money system, basically. So for me, it's the same. It all comes down to the macro eventually. But for an alt season, the macro requires to be a little bit better than for Bitcoin. But yeah, eventually that will happen, right? And I also think like there's a case to be made that people say like, well, yeah, I mean, there are too many altcoins out there and altcoins are just scams and I don't know what. Like, fuck that. If there are scams mostly. But in a market that goes up, nobody cares about that, right? So I don't really care about it. But also, yeah, I mean, if you look at that alt season chart, right? And I show this, but if you overlay it on the Russell against the S&P, so the big stocks versus the small stocks versus the big stock, basically. You see how like this chart is pretty much the same, right? Where you have small cap companies outperforming in 2021 because the ISM, like the whole macro was doing well, altcoins were doing the same, and it's all bleeding right now. Occasionally a dead cat bounce, right? And overall it's the same. So if you say like, well, there are, for example, too many altcoins, you could also say like there are too many stocks, right? It's like also shows like, hey, it's macro, right? And when it comes to macro, eventually I'm like short term, everything can go to shit. But I'm also like, if it really gets bad, then they will print. So I like don't really worry about that actually. But yeah, short term, anything could happen. Therefore, I always have cash, right? You want to be able to buy dips. If Bitcoin, in my worst case scenario, would go to 70K, short term, have a little more patient. Long term, it's fucking great, actually. It's such an opportunity. I made a poll just to see how people feel about it. Like, what's the reason that crypto tops, bottoms, right? That we just discussed. Is it because of cycles? Is it because of seasonality, like macro? Somebody says, because you are wrong and that marks the time. Yeah, I mean, I bet the whole market looks at what I'm saying and then does the opposite. Like, I have that power. Definitely be more risky to be out of the market. Yeah, at this stage it is. I see it a lot. If you, for example, right now as well, look at Bitcoin and you look at the fair value that Bitcoin is sitting, right? Like the fair value for Bitcoin is now sitting at $135,000. If you look at the previous cycles, right, it went like not just to the fair value, it went way over the upper bound fair value, right? Like way over it. And of course that like, although the fair value is also diminishing, I guess that how far you go above it should also be a little bit diminishing. But this is not to be called diminishing. We even did not we really go above it. Like we touched it like once and that's it. There's so much more room. But again, it explains like, hey, the whole business cycle, again, that's slow but steady. And that also happens to be the first time that Bitcoin is now showing these kind of patterns, right? Like, yeah. Overall, it's way more dangerous to be out of the market than in the market, and I see it in a lot of groups on Telegram as well nowadays. That big influencers say like, well, I think it's over this quarter, and it's all based on seasonality. And I think that this is the cycle that people find out that there's nothing like a Bitcoin seasonality, right? Like based on what I've just showed, and if that's the case, then I don't know, Bitcoin can go to 140K and people will still call it probably a bear trap. And by the time it's even higher than that, they'd be like, oh, maybe we should get in, right? Like, that's how it works. Except typo in the thumbnail indeed. The reason that Bitcoin tops out, sentiment, nothing less, nothing more. Well, the nothing less, nothing more. Like, I don't think that, like, again, I think that what I just said about the macro, that's my opinion at least, and yeah, and therefore the sentiment comes to life as well. But it definitely plays a role. I mean, look, last cycle when we topped out, man. I mean, it was all like very euphoric, and then everything went to shit. Right, everything went to shit. Everything started to collapse. We had deepacks, we had scams, we had everything, and people were panic selling. Yeah, and now everybody's like, "Well, everything looks fine, but it's Q4, so we should sell." Will that be the huge bear market narrative? Come on, man. I don't think so. ISM is printing a bear flag. Look, like I said, eventually it will go up, right? This thing this thing oscillates for so long right now. What happened to my chart, dude? Well, it doesn't matter. This is you call a bear flag? I get what you're coming from. Yeah, but maybe. But then again, like I said, maybe we will go down to the range low again, and that will explain why Bitcoin maybe goes to like my worst case target is 70K. And that could happen, and that could be the ultimate bear trap. Actually, that people I already hear now people saying like we go to 50K, 40, 30. I'm like, wow. I think you're gonna get wrecked by expecting that. To be honest, think about it. Why would Bitcoin go into a same 70% bear market if it never went into a parabolic bull market in the first place? Right? It's not like, well, the bear markets are like diminishing for no reason. It's because the bull markets that come before that are diminishing, right? So it's not that euphoric. It's not really overbought. If it's overbought, there's a lot of selling off, right? Yeah. It's not like happening right now. It's not overbought at all. Actually, Bitcoin is based on everything actually super undervalued at the moment. Yeah, okay. Look, so look, this is the sentiment at the moment, right? The market goes down, and then people come out with like Moon Boys will always get wrecked. Look, there is a being in essence I agree with you actually, because Moon Boys, I don't know what your definition is, but I think that like if you're talking about Moon Boys, that's like that guy, the Moon Carl or whatever, right? Like up, but always like also not recognizing the bear markets when it's actually bad, when things, it's just buy all the time. I don't know, but the people that stepped into my channel for the last 2 years, yeah, you have only seen me bullish maybe, but I was bearish as fuck on alts earlier. And that's why people hated me for that, right? And now it's the other way around again. I said like bears in a bull market get wrecked even more because yeah, that's simply true, right? And eventually, if you look at Bitcoin, like yeah, you can better be a long-term bull than a long-term bear, of course. But yeah, then it's going like how is it going? And I'm like, again, Bitcoin is down 22-ish% from its all-time high, right? So therefore I noticed that the sentiment is just really bad. People see a small correction and they try to make fun of bulls, and I'm like, but dude, like if you like are in this type of market right here and people are screaming bullish all the time, yeah, like come on, man, block these people, laugh at them, make fun of them. But I've been laughed at this dip when I was buying. I've been laughed at this dip when I was buying. And now the same, right? This is it, but it's not even like, weren't the bulls like actually like, what's the reason to laugh? I mean, it was great, right? So yeah. But you'll notice, right? Again, that the sentiment is like, I don't know, and I honestly sometimes I don't really get where it's coming from. I kind of get it, right? I mean, crypto is going down. People, they are not even sure what to look at. Only thing they know is the 4-year cycle. That's such a common thing. And based on that, they're now really scared, right? While in reality, this is like great. Right? But also here people were scared, right? Also here people were scared. And that had nothing to do with the 4-year cycle because it wasn't time according to the 4-year cycle. But it's just that low prices just scare the shit out of people. And that's just, yeah, human nature, right? It's not weird, but then I do feel like, but okay, these are your feelings, understandable, normal. But now let's try to use, thinking as well, apply that. And then we can come to the conclusion that it's actually all fine. Somebody said you cannot win against Benjamin. It's not that I'm in a boxing match with that dude or anything. I just don't agree with everything that he says. And you will lose. And look, but that's also the thing. And I want to be honest here. And maybe one of them, but there are a lot of people that just blindly follow him or any other influencer. And the thing is that if he makes a mistake, then it's not just him being on the losing side. It's his whole audience being on the losing side. So it's like he's playing with like leverage, right? If he makes a wrong trade, then thousands of people get liquidated, basically. Because honestly, often people say like, well, yeah, but he is right about everything. He's not. He has made so many wrong calls. Like that 0.25 target for altcoins. Like, I'm like, well, he looks at the wrong chart. This includes stables, right? But still, he's been calling it since June last year. We are sitting at the same levels as June last year, right? And it never went there, even during the huge liquidation event. It didn't even get there. So people are maybe waiting for something that never comes, right? But yeah, I mean, he says like, well, cycle, and that's it. But I think that it's now starting to become biased, and I'm not like saying this because I feel like he's wrong and I'm right and all of that shit. It's more that it's becoming a little inconsistent, and I see people just blindly following that without thinking for themselves. And I just try to provide the other point to it as well. And then if you still feel like that it should play out the way he says, then fine. But at least use all the data there is, right? Because what I notice in his private chat as well is that he now posts like, well, if Bitcoin closes today below the 50 weekly moving average, then there's a good chance that it's all over. And yeah, what I just said about that moving average, like it closed below it many times, 2 weeks by the way, but whatever. But then it's over, and I feel like, okay. But so you use a certain indicator to say that it's over. All the other indicators that he has on its own platform, though, which he created, are now not like accurate anymore. So he created a whole platform with indicators that did not flash at all. And then he says, well, that all doesn't matter because seasonality, so my whole platform is useless. But then he says like, well, this indicator that now looks bearish, this is the one that's actually, I feel like, man, it's a little like, I want to see this. So I don't know, really biased, man. Yeah, so I don't know. Long story, cool story. I don't have time to read that. But maybe you're right. I don't know what you say. The macro is screaming not over, just bought more of everything. That's a lot. Yeah, but no, it's screaming indeed not over. So yeah. This one I don't really got. Like I get a lot of comments like, so I make these kind of videos. Sometimes they're a little shorter lately. Sometimes I'll be annoying and just make a video of an hour like now, right? But then I try to show as many things as possible make my point, right? Hopefully to help some people like looking at what I'm looking at. And yeah, then the YouTube comments are the cycle is done. And I often also ask why, but usually there's no real response to that. But yeah, as you can see, it's all like people like the fear is really high, and it's just, I don't know, man. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like everybody expects it, and then that happens, and nobody gets wrecked. Well, if nobody gets wrecked, it means that the chart doesn't go down as well. So it literally is not possible. And there are not many people bullish anymore. So yeah, the small group of winners, like usual, I think that I know who these people are going to be. But overall, it is looking pretty good. And let me tell you this. Look, also when it comes to altcoins, again, right? And I think that we mostly seem to forget this. And sorry for being a little bit slow today. I'm fucking tired. But I think a lot of people seem to not really consider this. It's always now like, well, Bitcoin goes into a bear market. Look, again, I see max 2% reason that that's possible. But again, I wonder if we can, even if this happens, call that a bear market. But I don't know. But even if that happens, it doesn't mean you have to be bearish on alts at this stage, right? Because if we believe in the cycle so much, in purely crypto-based cycles, right? So not the macro that I was talking about. Isn't alt season part of the same cycle? Like, but then, like, well, I guess that's not like, because that doesn't fit the bearish bias that we should have about it. I don't know. But if we look at alt season and we overlay Bitcoin on that, you can also see, like, for example, in 2017, Bitcoin had a fat blow off top. You could honestly, right? Like, bull market, bam, nothing, no bear market right away. That was where altcoins started to go up, right? Against Bitcoin. And you might be like, well, but if Bitcoin goes down and altcoins still go down on the dollar pair, that depends. If altcoins don't go up really hard against Bitcoin, while Bitcoin is going down really hard against the dollar, then that could happen. But again, Bitcoin never went into an oversold territory. It never went to a euphoria stage. The whole macro never went overextended in any way, right? So if Bitcoin goes down, then like I said, my absolute worst case target will be around 70K. That's like 25% down from here. I cannot even call that a bear market, dude, sorry. So I don't see a world where altcoins are not going up in that case. Because if you look, this run by alts, when Bitcoin topped out, right? The exact top for Bitcoin. That's what altcoins started to outperform. That was on December 11, 2017 till the first week of January 2018. Now, if you look at altcoins on the dollar pair, what happened in that period was this. That was from this candle to this candle. And if we measure that, altcoins, and this is just the top 125 high caps, right? Not low caps. They went up with 350%. There was a 4.5x. Alts did a 4.5x as soon as the bear market started. Okay? So again, even if we get, sorry to put it like this, but even if nothing makes sense anymore and we do get into a bear market right now, you see that it doesn't have to mean shit necessarily for alts. Because why actually? Well, what whales do, they look at Bitcoin and be like, fuck that. I'm not done yet, though. So they move their money out of Bitcoin, no longer profitable. And they look like, well, what's undervalued in this market still? What has low liquidity? Yeah, and if you look right here, yeah, altcoin liquidity against Bitcoin, it was very pumpable, right? And if you look where we are right now, well, we're actually at the same level as back then. That's interesting. We are at this. So if you look where we are right now, how easy it is to pump them. And you might be like, well, yeah, but these altcoins are now higher cap. Yeah, But here, Bitcoin was a lot lower than what it is here now, right? So there is literally more liquidity to put it into altcoins that need more liquidity. So overall, that weights out. So, yeah, it's not weird too. If you feel like, man, bear market incoming, then you maybe should have around 4x expectations for alt. Still, like we've seen that happens, right? A few more, and then I want to wrap it up. But just want to give you an idea of what I'm thinking about certain things and what my whole thought process is behind it. Because I also, like Moonboys, they often give no reason for why things will go up. They're just like, well, it will go up because I'm just a fucking idiot. Yeah, okay, but I will try to provide as many reasons as possible why I think it will go up, actually. Not because I want. If I honestly see, like, well, things are looking bearish, then fine, I'm going to take my money out, right? I'm not going to stay in that market in that case. Bitcoin won't go higher either. Think about the economy. It's so obvious. It's been happening. Even with money printing, people don't have jobs, no liquidity, housing crashes. Housing crashing. Well, it's done. Maybe a bounce, but I will sell. Yeah, you could. But again, like even with money printing, what money printing? Like, again, if you look at where I have that in the first place, but even if you look at the Fed balance sheet, then could you say like that there is a lot of money printing going on right now? Like this, the balance sheet is going down. There is no money printing at this moment, right? So yeah, of course you're saying people cannot afford shit. Yeah, that's because this is now low, right? And it is not going up. And again, also the ISM, it is sitting at low levels. So yeah, here people don't have money. That also explains why we are not in a parabolic run at the moment. But the fact that we are low is not a reason that we will go lower, of course. That's a weird reason, right? This was funny. You have been not right, not one fucking time, man. Okay. I'm sorry, FOMO. Yeah. Yeah, okay, I don't know. I think this was an emotional moment, and then it started to but indeed, like, yeah, you're pissed. I've bought the dip. What is going on? Sorry, what's going on? Why no alt season? Again, because of what I just explained, like, I think that's the reason that we don't have an alt season, right? You could say, like, okay, this is all a big coincidence, right? Every single move Bitcoin has followed from the ISM, all a freaking coincidence. The fact that the stock market is looking the same as the alt season chart, it's all a coincidence. It's all... But how speculative is that, right? So I feel let's be on the safe side. And let's not speculate on something that has always worked like perfectly. And again, very simple, the 4-year cycle hasn't, right? And to call one little thing, explain the 2011 top. I'm shitposting and trolling a lot on Twitter lately, and everybody's responding to that. But I then ask, like, hey, for the people that believe in the 4-year cycle, can somebody explain the 2011 top? You know how many replies I got? 0, right? And it shows, like, people are emotional, but they cannot really use something to actually explain why they think it's bad. And it's simply because it doesn't look bad. It doesn't. It's really, guys, please. And the sentiment is actually, like I said, that's another indicator that it's all going up. So if people feel like, man, I'm posting bearish shit, know that you are actually proving the bull's point, right? Because this is not the type of sentiment that we get right before we get into, or after we got into a bear market. Like, this is not top sentiment. Yeah, according to this guy, he's always right. So I assume that he will start a YouTube channel soon. Because being right always is really... This guy is always trolling. I think he called every single local low the end. It's interesting how today Bitcoin dominance is going down with the Bitcoin crash. Maybe some whales are buying alt right now before the end of QT, possibly. Could be, I don't know. It could be the shift right now. It could be that it ranges for a while. Overall, the Bitcoin dominance, I think that being bullish on the dominance right now, it had a run, right? From end of 2022 until mid 2025. It had a long run, right? Here, it had a long run from beginning 2018 until December 2020. Long run as well, right? You had time to be bearish, or in this case, bullish on the Bitcoin dominance. It's now getting rejected at a very, at a point where you would expect it to be rejected. The risk levels on the Bitcoin dominance is high. Also, something that I feel like that with the whole Benjamin thing is like, yeah, he made these risk levels and all nice and buy below that risk, sell above that risk, and this and that. Yeah, and whenever the Bitcoin dominance was sitting at like 98% risk, it's still like, let's be bullish on it. Yeah, okay, fine. That was here though. But okay. Yeah, and now it's going here and QT is going to stop. So I feel like, yeah, I mean, being bullish on it right now, it's just a couple years too late, actually. So we'll see how it plays out. Yeah. People hang on too long and fail to recognize the end of the bull run. Get wrecked. The cycle still exists. So I said, you're still writing the reasons. And then it's, I don't need to write the reasons. We're just in a bear market. And that goes on for the whole time, basically. So, I don't know. Yeah, Bitcoin is in a correction and therefore we are in a bear market. Look, I mean, it depends on what people's definition of a bear market is, right? Maybe there's some misconception. I just call this a bear market. Something like that, right? I call this a bear market. There are also people that said that this was a bear market, right? Or including COVID. Yeah, I honestly think like, man, we had the cycle here. And what we do in between the cycle, whatever, right? Yeah, if you want to call this a bear market, then this was a bear market, then this was a bear market, then this was a bear market. Like, I don't see it like that. Yeah, some people do seem to agree. That's good. Like, and I like that, but I also really enjoy the fact that a lot of people don't agree right now, right? Because it's just the fact that, like, if like everybody screams bear market, and then it's not gonna happen. If everybody screams like, no, it's gonna higher, and then it's not gonna happen, right? It's not, crypto is not like pleasing the herd. So I don't mind getting a lot of comments, people saying that we are in a bear market, because it makes me a lot more confident that everything is going to go up. But yeah, I mean, if you think so, let's get good reasons against good reasons and then see where we come up with. Someone said the alt season that sometimes I have to do the same comment, fucking YouTube tripping. The alt season that you are hoping for might give you a 3x return, but you are already down 20x from where you started years ago. I don't know if you mean me, but I'm not down 20x, dude. Focus on the market as it is, not the one you wish it were. Look, I get this last part, but it's also the same as saying like, go with the flow at the moment. And that's exactly the same as saying, right, like, hey, it's bad right now, so be bearish. And whenever it's bullish, but then you're always too late. You also want to take a little bit of a look, of course, of what you think is going to happen, right? But overall, the alt season that people are hoping for, you know, to give it 3x, I don't know why we should now have targets of a 3x. And this is what I'm going to wrap it up with. But I think, honestly, that this is the danger. That the market is obviously showing like altcoins. I never said this, actually, really. But altcoins are overall easy 10x from this point. Easy, right? And why do I say that? Because it actually is. I will show you. But I think that the reason that people are going to get wrecked right now is that, man, even if somebody is positive right now, they say like, well, maybe a 3x and that's it. Isn't it funny though that if you again look at alts versus Bitcoin, right? Because if that outperforms, then alts are going up hard. But isn't it funny that even in this December pump, right, which wasn't even an alt season, people said all over the place, 10x here, 20x there. Everybody like was screaming like higher, 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 easy. And now we are actually lower, so we have more upside. People say maybe a 3x. If you think about it, how does it make sense, right? How? Here people were screaming 100x. Yeah, look. Here people were screaming it was over. Again, it's going with the sentiment, but this is actually the point, or at least this is whole where you should be saying like, hey, we now have a lot of room to go up. But it's because whenever we are down, of course, people feel like, man, it's a bad market, so it will never go up again. But this is exactly the place where we need to go before it can go up. And it makes all the sense in the world, but yet people, they feel like the emotions are like they take over, right? But very specific about it, if you think about it, about your comment, right? Maybe 3x. Look at this. The Bitcoin dominance. It's in this trend right here. My target for the Bitcoin dominance is 42%-ish. Now, look at this. Bitcoin dominance, this point, went down with around 13%. It's not much. An alt season, right? Like for example, this right here was 50%. This right here was around the same, 47%. Now we have seen 13 so far. This 13% though was not into alts, really. Right? That was the move from like June 2025 until September. You know where that money went? ETH, right? April, June, bam, right here. There was money going into Ethereum, right? Because you often have these flows, Bitcoin, ETH, and this was just an ETH, little ETH season right here, right? And honestly, I think that, man, okay, but however, this small correction by the Bitcoin dominance made ETH do a 3.5x. 260% was a 3.5x for ETH. It was a $180 billion market cap. So tell me this, if a $180 billion market cap with a lot of liquidity already does a 3.5x because the Bitcoin dominance sneezed, what do you think is going to happen if that money, if this continues, right, and we don't get a 13% correction, but we get the rest of the move, which is more than double, if that goes into altcoins, which are like not even comparable to the amount of liquidity that ETH has, right? Expecting a 3x on alts is so fucking bearish, right? Now, there's already some liquidity out of Bitcoin, still in ETH, right? So you might be like, well, it's already in ETH. It cannot go to altcoins. Well, I mean, again, look back at altcoins versus ETH. Then in that case, they have quite some room to go up, right? Then we have a lot of liquidity in Bitcoin. Like the last fat ass alt season last cycle started when Bitcoin was 30K. There was a lot of money flowing into alts. Now it's around 100. Right? Now alts are sitting low against ETH. Now the low caps are sitting low against the high caps. So low caps, right? The lower caps, like everything outside of the top 10 is basically what I mean by that. In the top 125, not to mention the shit coins, they are now really low against Ethereum. They are really low against Bitcoin. They are really low against the dollar. And they are really low against the high caps. And there is a lot of money printing probably coming. So there are so many sources where that money can come from. And again, the low caps there's not a lot of liquidity in there. If you look at individual alts, you can also see some are down a lot. Right, Arrow is one of the great outperformers right here, but still, that's in a pretty good correction right now. If you look at Chainlink, I've posted this a long time ago, by the way, guys. Look at this. Sometimes you want to sit out a trade, okay? Just sit it out. We're almost there right now. If you look at the render, right, render is down from like 14 bucks, give or take, to 2 bucks. Chain GPT is down a lot. Right, Beam completely down the drain, like so many coins. And you could say like, well, yeah, they're dead, right? Yeah, sure, go with it. But do keep in consideration that if just like 1% of all that liquidity flows into alts, these things are 5x in a week, right? And that's not to make it bigger, sound bigger than it is. Now, that's really easy with these current prices. And the last thing to wrap it up with, if you ever feel like it's low because it's dead, look at Zcash. This is like one coin. And if you look at this, one coin that looked like shit, right? Low, low, low. Every cycle it gave up more and more and more. And then it erased 2 bear markets in one monthly candle, basically. But also, Zcash came out, and when it came out, it crashed with 99.9%. Yeah, it cannot get much worse than that, right? And then it went up with almost 4,000%. 99.9% down. Steam, in the last, no, not the last, but before that, in the bull market of Bitcoin, right? Steam went down with 98%. Right? That's nuts, right? In the meantime, Bitcoin went from $670, and it was the low, and Bitcoin went double, right? So Bitcoin went double the price, and in the meantime, this altcoin went down 98.7%. The current drawdown of alts is not even close to what this was. They have to go down 10x more than what they are right now. And in the meantime, Bitcoin doubled. Bitcoin was in the bull market. Altcoins got completely destroyed. Everybody who invested anything lost everything. And yet, this thing went up 15,000%. So if you ever feel like it's bad because it is down, look back at last cycles and you have the full proof, like, guys, it can easily get 10, 50, 100 times as worse, and it still is not dead. So that's a nice positive way of wrapping up the video, I think. This was long, but I think that I needed to show this because, again, when things are in a small correction, people are shitting themselves, right? And I feel like, man, maybe a lot of people are not made for crypto because we just see like it can get so much worse and still all be fine. So if you are bearish because things are down, then here you go. Like, you don't need to. You really don't need to. You just have to have some patience, sit it out, not buy the falling knives all the time. Don't go all in at the tops, just the usual, right? Buy when there's fear, take profits when it's high, and then it will be all fine. The run is like, we haven't seen anything yet. I'm pretty sure about that. So, like the video if you like the video, subscribe if you feel like I want to see this more often, turn the bell notification on, and I'll see you in the next one.